On a cool October night in 2011, 17-year-old Blake Chappell left the East Kuwait High School homecoming dance in Noon, Georgia. But just hours later, that joy would unravel into one of Georgia's most chilling unsolved murder cases. Blake never made it home, and instead, he vanished into the night only to be found a week later murdered under mysterious circumstances. But who could have done this? And why was his life cut short right after the happiest night of his young life? And how is this true crime case only now just getting solved after more than a decade? This is the haunting story of Blake Chappell's disappearance and murder, a case that has baffled investigators and disturbed the community. Welcome to the Crime Stories. If this is your first time here, I'm your host, Harry, and I post new true crime stories every single day. We try to keep things simple here, so if you're into that sort of thing, consider subscribing. It's totally free and just lets you know when I post new cases. Blake Chappell was a young boy living in Soy, Georgia. He was remembered as humorous, gentle, caring, and one of a kind. Blake loved playing Guitar Hero, as many of us angsty teenagers did around this time. But he also loved riding dirt bikes. Blake was also very kind-hearted. His mom said that Blake would bring stray animals home and even offer his friends to stay at his place if they didn't have anywhere to go. He was always thinking of others. He also deeply loved Halloween more than any other holiday. He loved trick-or-treating and baking things, and he would even sell baked goods and energy drinks in his neighborhood and school with a small markup. All in all, he may have given some people a bit of a bad boy vibe with his appearance, but Blake was anything but one. He was an incredibly kind-hearted young man. When things got tough for the family, Blake took care of his mom after she suffered a stroke. And even though he was the youngest, Blake was very responsible. At the time of the case, he'd been dating his girlfriend Ryan for a good while. He essentially had to start his life over when the family moved to Soy, but he settled in relatively quickly. Overall, Blake was just enjoying life, doing all the typical teenage things. Life was going great until it wasn't. This was a very pivotal time in Blake's life, and this was what led him and his mom to moving to Senoy in the first place. So stepping back to May of 2011, Blake was living with his mom in Jonesboro, Georgia, and he was dating another girl, not Ryan. At this time, Blake and this girl were young and in love, but something caused the girl to run away from home. Now, we don't know why she actually ran away from home. Some speculate that her home was miserable, whereas others believe that she intended to run away with Blake. We really don't know. But when Blake heard of this, he hopped on his bike and went out looking for her. But someone else was looking for the runaway girl too, her stepdad. Long story short, Blake found his girlfriend first, and he took her back to her home in Hunter Ridge Trailer Park. But he was greeted by the girl's stepdad, who was incredibly angry for all the obvious reasons. I'm assuming the stepdad thought that Blake and the girl had tried to run away together, but I'm not really sure. But Blake was in for a very unpleasant ride. The girl's stepdad proceeded to beat Blake to a pulp. And even the police were called. Now, I'm sure you're thinking the stepdad will get caught for, I don't know, beating Blake without even first listening to him and the girl first. But oddly, that didn't happen. Blake was the one who got arrested, and he had to spend a little over 2 weeks in jail before he was released, and all charges against him were dropped. According to witnesses and text messages between Blake and his friends, her stepdad was there with 2 men, and they were also armed. The group basically threatened to kill Blake and even sent threats to the family. This was all really unsettling for Blake and his family, especially considering the guy didn't even do anything wrong. I mean, I don't know what really happened, but judging from the way these events unfolded, Blake brought the girl back home. He went out looking for her. Seems to me that Blake had no intention of running away with her. But again, we still don't know the whole thing. Still, the stepdad's actions to beat Blake black and blue and threaten him so fiercely were unnerving. But anyway, Blake's mom, Melissa, begged Blake to break up with the girl, and soon enough, they decided to move away to Soy. Melissa claimed that she was very scared for her son's life, and she forbade Blake from ever seeing or reaching out to any of his friends from Jonesboro ever again. This move was supposed to be what everyone needed in order to start fresh and just get a clean slate. And sure enough, after their move, Blake and Melissa didn't have to deal with any more threats. Blake listened to his mom. He kept no contact with anyone from his past whatsoever, and he started his life fresh. And so new people, new neighborhood, a clean slate, or so he thought. Months after the incident, it was October of 2011 and homecoming at Blake and Ryan's high school. Blake was really excited for this day. He'd been anticipating homecoming for weeks, and he couldn't have been happier. Blake had told his mom that he was going to spend the night at one of his friends' houses, Austin's, and she agreed. Melissa and Blake made a promise that he would go nowhere else, and he accepted. After the Jonesboro incident, Melissa's overprotectiveness was understandable. She didn't want Blake to be anywhere that she wasn't aware of. And Blake assured her that he would do as he was told. So the plan was to go to Ryan's before the homecoming dance, where their two would then take pictures, and then Shannon, Ryan's mom, would drive the couple first to a restaurant for dinner and then to the school for the main event. After the dance, Ryan and Blake had plans to watch a movie, and then Blake would go to Austin's. So Blake had places to be. This young man's schedule was packed, and that was exactly what happened. Blake arrived a little late at Ryan's house because he'd gone on a last-minute trip to the mall to buy the perfect tie to match Brian's dress. But all was well, and things went as planned. Blake was just your typical 17-year-old high school boy who wanted to have an amazing night with his girlfriend, and he did. After the dance and movie at Ryan's were over at around 11:30, Blake went straight to Austin's house, and there he called his mom to tell her all about the night. According to Melissa, Blake sounded incredibly happy, and he told her about the hundreds of pictures he took at the dance. Well, the rest of the night started at Austin's house, and the boys hung out for a bit and even went for a walk to a local gas station in Austin's neighborhood. By the time the two reached home, it was 2 or 3 a.m., and this was when Blake's phone pinged with a text message. It was Ryan. And after texting back and forth for a bit, he suddenly decided he wanted to go back to Ryan's and spend some more time with her. Now, this was not the original plan. Shannon was tasked with driving Blake and Ryan to and from the homecoming dance, and she made her last stop at Austin's house to drop Blake off. So now, if Blake wanted to go to Ryan's, he had to make the journey on foot and by himself in the middle of the night. So Austin gave Blake his jacket and keys to the house for easier entry. Then he went to bed. And Blake set out for Ryan's home, which was about 3 miles away from Austin's house. He reached Ryan's home at around 4:30 a.m. and snuck in through the window so as to not get caught. I tell you, the sheer determination of a teenage boy never ceases to amaze me. But naturally, Ryan and Blake got caught by Ryan's grandma, and she asked Blake to leave, which he did. Ryan remembered Blake leaving while wearing black pants, a hoodie, and Austin's jacket. And this was around 5 a.m. Blake then teeked back to Austin's house and was texting Ryan along the way. He also texted Ryan's mom, Shannon, and apologized for sneaking into their house. This was a bold move, but again, it seriously just shows you the character of Blake. He made some obvious mistakes, yes, but Blake was legitimately doing his best to try to be a decent person and make things right when he did wrong. Well, a short while later, a few texts to Ryan included Blake telling her how he was stopped by a police officer who had asked for his ID. After this, the last text that Blake sent Ryan was complaining about the cold, and all this took place at about 5:30 a.m. Austin's house was only a couple of miles away from Ryan's, and there were several routes one could take, but Blake never made it back to his friend's house. When morning came, it was actually Shannon who asked Ryan if she'd heard from Blake, but she hadn't. Ryan tried calling and texting Blake, but he wasn't picking up his phone. Shannon then told Ryan to call Austin and ask him about Blake and whether he'd made it home or not. When Ryan caught Austin, he was just as worried and surprised. He hadn't seen or heard from Blake either. He'd given Blake his house keys, but at that time he wasn't there. Ryan's dad and Austin both went out looking for Blake but returned home with no news. That was when all of them decided to let Melissa know about her son's disappearance. When Melissa got that call bright and early, she was literally floored. If you remember, Melissa had made a promise with Blake to stay at Austin and not go anywhere until morning. He'd broken that promise, and now he was missing. The police began a search for Blake while Blake's mom and friends were out looking on their own, too. Melissa stopped by a nearby gas station and asked if they'd seen Blake anywhere around. The person at the gas station claimed that they saw Blake at around 7:30 a.m., and apparently he asked when the store was going to open. The police also conducted searches in the areas where Blake was last seen close to Ryan and Austin's house and the path that he was believed to have taken. Meanwhile, investigators also set out to check Thales texts and any form of contact Blake had with anyone and everyone. They checked Blake's messages sent to Ryan and Shannon, and what stood out to them the most was the text in which he mentioned that he was stopped by a police officer when he was going from Ryan's house back to Austin's house. Now, the police did check the recent records, and surprisingly, There is no record of any cop on patrol at that time stopping a 17-year-old boy in that path. Usually, when a police officer stops anyone and inquires about where they're going and all that, they have to put that on record. That's just kind of how things go. It's standard procedure. So there being no record of stopping Blake at that time, it rubbed the police and everyone the wrong way. Was it possible that this police officer was just casually asking Blake where he was going? Was Blake even sure that the man who stopped him and asked for his ID was even a police officer? Or was it someone pretending to be a police officer? This was really bizarre. Well, in the blink of an eye, days, weeks, and months passed. There was no sign of Blake. The police reached out to the public for any information, and they also put forward air ward for any information on Blake and who could have abducted him. Because even though the police initially treated Blake's case as a runaway, it had been a long time by now and Blake had not contacted anybody. His phone and belongings were also never recovered. Everything was leading to a dead end. And to make matters worse, the Chappell family was receiving some very weird phone calls. Now, they weren't frequent or anything, but the timing was eerie to say the least. It had been a little over 2 months since Blake had disappeared when in November of 2011, Melissa received a phone call at home. Sources say it was either an unknown or a blocked number. And when Melissa picked up the phone, no one spoke on the other end. Melissa could make out what she thought was a TV, and the call was long, 5 minutes to be exact, and then the caller just hung up. It could be someone random or even someone trying to pull Anasty prank, but it was something Melissa couldn't shake off. We don't know if the police managed to trace this call or investigate it any further. If this was a prank, then it was a very mean one, and people seriously need to grow up and stop picking on worried and bereaved families like this. Because if it was a prank, this isn't the first time we've covered something like this. But if it wasn't a prank call, then could it be someone who knows about Blake? Or worse, was this someone keeping Blake captive? This call was just very disturbing. But things were about to get even worse because a month after this call, in 2 months following Blake's disappearance, a discovery would be made. And Blake's case would take a turn for the worse. It was December 19th, 2011, and a couple of people were walking through an area called Summer Grove Parkway in Senoy. It's a relatively remote place with creeks and woods in the surrounding areas. As the people neared the creek, they saw something in the water. It looked like a mannequin was tossed face down in the creek, but we've all heard enough of these true crime stories to know it's never a mannequin. The police were called to the scene in the area it was taped off. Tragically, it was the body of a teen. The person clearly deceased was wearing only an undershirt and underwear. The only identification marks on the body were a tattoo on the chest and 2 lip piercings. It was 17-year-old Blake Chappell. The most devastating part of this discovery was the way that Blake passed away. He had one single wound to his head, and someone had used a firearm to take Blake's life. The police weren't sure how long Blake had been left here in the creek, though. But either Blake was murdered and left right there by that creek, or he was taken out elsewhere and his body was dumped here after the fact. The latter is what most people believe to be true because this area was close to Austin's home. And if you remember, searches were held there too in the initial days of Blake's disappearance. We don't know if this specific area was searched thoroughly or not, though. But Blake's family was made aware of the discovery. And 2 months after the inexplicable disappearance of her son, Melissa knew where Blake was found. But sadly, he wasn't coming back home. Melissa was beyond broken. She was very protective of Blake to begin with, since he was the youngest, and since the Jonesboro incident, she tried her hardest to keep Blake safe and let him enjoy his life too. But now Melissa had lost her youngest son, and that too suddenly and brutally. She was inconsolable, but she also wanted answers. She wanted Blake's murderer Toby caught and punished. So that's exactly what she set out to do. Even though Melissa's determination was relentless, finding Blake's killer was going to be easier said than done. And spoiler alert, it would take a long, long time to finally get some answers. The police wanted to look at potential persons of interest. They wanted to find out who could have so much animosity towards Blake to murder him and ruin his family like this. All the police knew at this point was that Blake went to Ryan's and then he made his way back to Austin's. Something happened to him on the way back to Austin's. That was pretty much all they knew for certain. But here's the thing. The police and anyone else for that matter aren't sure which route Blake took that night. Finding the answer would make the investigation much easier to navigate. As I mentioned, Blake's body was found somewhat close to Austin's home. Now this is helpful because it proves that Blake was going to Austin's and not anywhere else. But it's not groundbreaking because the police can't find anything that says who targeted him with any certainty. Also, Blake's phone and other belongings have not been found to this day. Blake had his phone with him, and he was wearing way more than just an undershirt and underwear when he left Ryan's house. So, where are his clothes and phone? Did someone get rid of them? Did someone abduct Blake, take him somewhere, murder him, get rid of the things he had on him, and then toss him back in the creek? There are hundreds of questions and not a lot of answers. Phone records and location tracking might be helpful, and Melissa even asked the police to use cell phone tracking and triangulation to pinpoint Blake's location precisely, but we don't know if the police have done this or not. If they have, then they haven't made this information public. Law enforcement was pretty tight-lipped about the details, and it's understandable to some extent. They probably don't want to risk the suspect getting away from them, but still, how Blake disappeared and then was discovered is truly haunting and very disturbing. It was inexplicable then, and it still is. Well, Blake's funeral washed shortly after his body was found in the creek. He was laid to rest on December 29th of 2011. Everyone was heartbroken and still in shock at the way that this crime unfolded. There are theories out there that explain possible motives for taking Blake's life, but keep in mind these are just theories floating around by randos online. They're not official police theories, but some suspect that Blake's ex-girlfriend's stepdad, the one who beat him to a pulp in Jonesboro back in May of 2011, he clearly threatened to kill Blake. But we don't know if the police have looked into this or not. Some people were also suspicious of Austin. They think it's really weird that Blake's remains were found so close to Austin's home. We don't know if the two friends had any bad blood between them, but unless the police find something out, we can't say much for sure. But as fate would have it, Blake's family was about to get some answers, just maybe not in the way they had hoped. Up until recently, people were pointing fingers at everybody. This was an unsolved case. It could have been anyone in Blake's life. It could have been a random person on the street with ill intent. People were suspicious of Blake's schoolmates, his friends, people he came across on the street, and even people from his past. They cooked up theories about dissatisfied customers of Blake's energy drink selling business and bike race rivals. Some were even suspicious of Blake's girlfriend, Ryan, her family, and even Austin. The point is Blake's case didn't have a lot of leads, so there was a ton of speculation all over. The police were conducting the investigation and were also going through the new leads and tips as time went on. But this carried on for over 10 years. Blake's case went unsolved for over a decade. Can you imagine being in Melissa's shoes and having to live every single day for 10+ years, not knowing why your son was stolen from you or who even did it? The determination to get justice for Blake was honestly the only thing that kept Melissa putting one foot in front of the other. It was hard to put it lightly, but she did it regardless. She made sure that Blake's case was never forgotten. She made public appearances, slapped Blake's name and case on billboards, and regularly reached out to the police for updates and information. She said, quote, "I just want to know why. Just allow us to have some peace. He was an innocent child. He did nothing wrong." Well, in March of 2024, new evidence finally surfaced and the police, along with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, combed through it. And as a result, 3 arrest warrants were issued in the Sharpsburg area. Again, the Newton police and GBI were very vague with the details, but they were definitely onto something because almost 15 years following Blake's disappearance in September of 2025, the police had arrested someone in relation to Blake's murder. The person they arrested was 38-year-old Scott Elliott Smith. The police clarified that Scotty was declared a person of interest when they were investigating a new lead. He was not previously investigated when Blake disappeared and was found back in 2011. When the police finally interviewed Scotty, he confessed to murdering 17-year-old Blake. Scotty was subsequently charged with murder, aggravated assault, tampering with evidence, possession of a firearm during commission of a crime, and even concealing a death. The police are still investigating a possible motive for the murder, though. And in the meantime, Scotty is being held behind bars in the Kuwait County Jail. As for Scotty, not much is known about him other than the fact that he was previously arrested in August of 2018 for charges including criminal damage and criminal damage to government property. He was released from prison in July of 2020. While we don't know who Scott really is and how he's related to Blake or knows him, he's confessed to his murder. The case is still under investigation, and we can hope that as time goes by, the police can find evidence that can finally give the Chappell family some semblance of closure. But unfortunately, I think we'll know that people like this rarely ever reveal their true motive. It's highly likely that even after spending years with trials, hearings, sentences, and other ins and outs of cases like this, it's still highly likely we will never know why exactly Blake lost his life that day. But I sure hope I'm wrong. But who is this Scotty Elliott Smith guy? How did he even know Blake? And did he know Blake? Or did he tag him randomly? Well, I saw one fringe report that claims a news reporter suggested that Blake and his killer did not know each other personally. But this information has not been confirmed by the police. All we know for certain is that Scott was 7 years older than Blake. But how they came into contact that night, we may never know. In the months since these reports and confessions came out, there's been a ton of finger-pointing online. Some claim that the crime was fueled by illegal substances, but I found no report suggesting that Blake was involved in anything like that. I even managed to dig up a few comments from Blake's family after this report came out, and they spoke about him at length on a Reddit post, but even they have no idea who this Scott guy is, or what his relationship was with Blake, if he had one at all. At the end of the day, it's just tragedy on top of tragedy. I just hope that in due time, Blake's family will be able to find the answers that they've been begging for, because almost 15 years, that's long enough. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of True Crime Stories. If you're new here and you liked the video, be sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing. It's completely free, and it just lets you know when I post new videos. If you love the channel and want to help support us, consider hitting that join button below the video and become a member of the channel. It allows you to see new videos sometimes days or weeks before they're posted to the public. And it's a great way to help the channel out financially. I appreciate all of you guys that have decided to do that. And speaking of which, I wanted to give a shout out to some new channel members this week, including Che Morningstar, Linda Butler, Jennifer Dowen, Angelia Huff, and I'm his one and only. And don't forget, you can grab a True Crime Stories t-shirt by clicking that link below the video, including our most recent It's Never a Mannequin t-shirt. But with that, my name is Tai Ken. I thank you guys again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next.